A desperate scream tears through the chaos as a terrified young girl frantically begs for someone to save her. Trembling yet defiant, the older twin fiercely shields her weeping little sister, bravely declaring she isn't scared because a big sister can do anything to protect her. A brutish kidnapper viciously snarls at the little brat to shut up, as panicked bystanders realize the screaming children are being abducted. Descending like an avenging force, a striking blonde man violently seizes the two kidnappers and coldly demands to know what the hell they think they are doing. Springing into action, the heroic stranger tenderly reassures the frightened sisters that they are safe now and vows to deliver them straight to their father. Gazing up in breathless awe, the tearful little girl whispers the name of her radiant savior, the noble Alan Sama. Recalling the fateful rescue, she remembers feeling deep in her bones that she would always be safe by his side, forever indebted for a debt her family never repaid. 12 years later at the present-day Gazard estate, the grown twins anxiously wonder what urgent matter their father wishes to discuss. Sipping her tea thoughtfully, one sister muses that the heroic Alan Sama should be returning any day now from the perilous northern monster subjugation campaign. A character card introduces Diana Gazard, the composed older twin daughter of the prestigious House Gazard. Teasing her flustered sister, the younger twin playfully points out that Wani Sama's head is still hopelessly full of Alan Sama, reminding her they were only 7 when kidnapped and are now fully grown 19-year-old adults. Her heart swelling with joyful anticipation, Diana blissfully dreams that she can finally repay her beloved Alan Sama at last. A sharp knock echoes as the twins politely announce themselves and excuse their entrance before their father. Stepping into the study, the two elegant sisters brace themselves with quiet, matching apprehension. A character card introduces the imposing Wesley Gazard, the stern and calculating head of House Gazard. Clenching his jaw gravely, Wesley reveals a telegram just arrived from the Northern Front and solemnly urges Diana and Cordelia to listen calmly, confirming Diana's dreadful suspicion that it concerns Alan Sama. Standing frozen in stunned silence, the twins receive the devastating, world-shattering news that Alan is dead. A haunting flashback flickers as the smiling image of the doomed hero fades into the encroaching darkness. Delivering the grim details, their father gravely explains that Alan was tragically caught in a violent stampede. Struggling to comprehend the horror, a shaken twin asks exactly what a stampede is, prompting the explanation that it occurs when a massive number of frenzied monsters suddenly floods a single area. Recounting the massacre, Wesley reveals the Third Night Order, including Alan, encountered a monstrous stampede during the Northern Subjugation campaign, and not a single one of them ever came back, leaving a devastated twin whispering a broken denial. Delivering the final cruel blow, their father explains a state funeral will be held next week, but Alan's remains were so badly damaged that they will never be able to gaze upon his beloved face again. Drowning in profound realization, Diana confesses she had wondered about it ever since she was a child, as her father softly calls her name. Recalling his gentle hand upon her head, she finally understands where that all-enveloping sense of safety came from every single time she saw the beloved Alan Sama. Tears streaming down her devastated face, Diana brokenly confesses the crushing truth that she loved Alan Sama with all her heart. Agony ripping through her chest, she desperately laments why she only realized her true feelings now, when it is far too late. Sensing her spiraling panic, her worried father gently urges Diana to breathe in slowly and asks if she can manage it. Collapsing beneath the crushing weight of grief, Diana brokenly admits she can't, bitterly acknowledging that realizing it now won't change anything. Standing before his flower-draped coffin, she confronts the hollow, irreversible reality that her cherished Alan is gone now. Gently laying a single delicate rose upon the casket, the mourning twin bids a silent, sorrowful farewell to her lost love. At the somber funeral, a concerned young man gently approaches and asks if Diana is even eating properly, prompting her to coldly insist he need not worry about her. A character card introduces Miles O'Donoghue, the second son of the prestigious O'Donoghue Marquis family, who worriedly notes that looking so frail simply isn't like her. Bristling faintly, Diana's stern father orders her to pull herself together, sharply reminding her that she is destined to inherit the entire Gazard dukedom one day. Heaving a heavy, sympathetic sigh, Miles quietly confesses that he simply can't stand watching her suffer like this any longer. Stepping forward with calculated resolve, Miles smoothly proposes that marrying him would be the best arrangement for them both, prompting a resigned Diana to accept that she has no choice but to support him. Reaching hesitantly toward the offered rose, a startled Cordelia watches as her sister wordlessly grasps the fragile symbol of her uncertain new future. Clinging to her lingering feelings, Diana concludes that perhaps a loveless marriage wouldn't be so terrible after all, warmly thanking both her sister and Miles for their support. Beaming with radiant affection, the devoted Cordelia cheerfully presents a slice of one Samus' favorite pound cake and sweetly asks if she will try some. Reflecting on her quiet resignation, Diana admits their marriage began with hollow detachment, yet confesses that over the passing years it slowly became something genuinely precious to her. A stark time skip abruptly transitions the somber tale forward by 5 turbulent years. A furious, anguished scream shatters the silence as an enraged voice demands to know how many of his children must be killed before Diana is finally satisfied. Racing desperately to intervene, a frantic Miles pleads with Diana to wait as a panicked voice cries out that this is already the 3rd horrifying time. Collapsing over the frail Diana, a desperate Miles demands to know if she's giving up and insists they must keep trying, while she weakly pleads to recover first because she refuses to waste any more lives. His face twisting into venomous cruelty, Miles savagely screams at her not to tell him what to do, branding his broken wife a worthless failure. Gazing up with hollow, tear-filled eyes, Diana quietly reminds him that he once swore he would support her back then, faintly asking why that promise shattered. Looming over her with chilling contempt, Miles coldly demands how he is supposed to support a woman who cannot even bear him a single child. A heavy creak breaks the suffocating silence as the defeated Diana stares blankly into the crushing emptiness. Desperately clutching at fading hope, she cries out Mila's name and swears she'll try harder, while he coldly cuts her off and orders her to listen. Realizing her marriage has irreparably collapsed once more, a hollow Diana bitterly laments that it is happening all over again. Sitting alone in the suffocating darkness of her ruined room, she despairs that every single time she believes things will finally improve, her entire world violently crumbles apart. Standing coldly in the doorway, the composed Cordelia announces that Miles Sama has abandoned the Gazard estate and will send someone later to handle the divorce proceedings. Bowing her head in quiet resignation, a grateful Diana acknowledges that her devoted sister has always looked out for her, as the door clicks ominously shut. Tears sliding down her exhausted face, Diana softly apologizes to Cordelia and mourns that her miserable life seems to be nothing but one crushing disaster after another. Sinking into crushing self-loathing, she brokenly wonders what she was even supposed to do, bitterly confessing that she simply can't do anything right, as faint ominous footsteps approach. Sitting tenderly at her sister's bedside, the gentle Cordelia clasps Diana's hand, offering what appears to be a rare moment of comforting sisterly warmth. A flicker of confusion crosses Diana's weary face as she senses something is subtly, dangerously wrong. A sickening realization jolts through her as she gasps in stunned disbelief at the cold blade suddenly pressed against her. Twisting the knife with chilling malice, Cordelia coldly declares that Diana is the one to blame, sweetly insisting this is the only way while her horrified sister repeatedly begs to know why. A slow, sinister smile spreads across Cordelia's face as her true, monstrous nature is finally unmasked. Leaning in with venomous glee, Cordelia confesses she does this simply because Diana irritates her every time she looks at her, cruelly mocking that Diana truly believed her twin was the only one ever on her side. Twisting the blade deeper with unhinged cruelty, the malicious Cordelia declares she will never allow a useless fool like her sister to become the head of House Gazard. Blood spilling from her lips, a devastated Diana realizes she has been betrayed even by her own beloved sister, tragically wondering what her entire suffering existence was ever even for. Blood pooling around her limp body, the mortally wounded Diana lies crumpled beside the discarded blade as her sister's cruel betrayal claims her fragile life. Her tear-streaked face frozen in agonized disbelief, Diana draws her final shuddering breath in a spreading crimson stain. A sudden violent gasp rips through her as Diana's eyes snap wide open, her heart pounding with raw, uncomprehending terror. Bitter self-contempt washes over her as she brands her entire tragic existence utterly pathetic while shattered fragments swirl around her. Suspended within a swirling vortex of colossal clock faces and spinning gears, Diana drifts weightlessly through a surreal river of unraveling time. A gentle knock breaks the eerie stillness as a soft, achingly familiar voice tenderly asks whether One-sama is still asleep. Blinking through her confusion, a wide-eyed Diana watches the cheerful Cordelia peek in and warmly warn her to start getting ready or she'll be late. Momentarily relieved to find her twin awake, Cordelia urges her to hurry for breakfast, while a stunned Diana can only stammer her sister's name in creeping disbelief. Tilting her head with innocent concern, The puzzled Cordelia teasingly asks whether One-sama is still half asleep. Staring at her own trembling, unblemished palm, a bewildered Diana realizes with dawning shock that there is no wound anywhere on her body. Sitting composedly upon the bed, the gentle Cordelia reminds her dazed sister that today is the graduation ceremony and gently urges her to pull herself together. Grasping the impossible truth, a shaken Diana realizes that by some cruel twist of fate or a mischievous prank of the gods, she definitely died once, and yet somehow returned. Marveling at the swirling gears of destiny, the reborn Diana understands she has miraculously traveled 7 years into her own past. A sweeping establishing shot reveals the grand, sunlit Gazard estate, where the twins prepare to share a peaceful morning breakfast. Cheerfully clinking her cup, the bright-eyed Cordelia begs One-sama to help her choose a dress afterward, while a wary Diana notes that her sister's movements match her memories exactly. Studying her sister's every gesture with quiet dread, Diana grimly concludes that the only unsettling difference now lies within herself. Forcing a serene smile, Diana inwardly admits she has become the only person who cannot help but gaze upon her beloved sister with deep, gnawing suspicion, silently wondering exactly when Cordelia first decided to murder her. Bubbling with excited affection, the oblivious Cordelia gushes that they must pick a lovely dress since His Highness the Crown Prince will also attend the ceremony, sweetly asking if One-sama feels the same way. A haunting memory surfaces of the imposing Alan warmly congratulating Diana Dono on her graduation, as her heart soars with the joyful realization that her cherished savior will be there today after all. Practically vibrating with delight, the sweet Cordelia begs for just one last dessert before insisting they carefully choose One-sama's dress too, prompting a fond Diana to gently agree. Applauding warmly at the graduation ceremony, Diana rejoices in the miraculous realization that her beloved Alan-sama is still very much alive at this point in time. Recalling the fateful morning, she remembers waking up unusually early, her weary eyes shadowed with lingering dread. Bounding over with a laden tray, the cheerful Cordelia proudly announces she baked One-sama's favorite pound cake and sweetly asks whether she will try some. Regarding the offered dessert with newfound wariness, a subtly guarded Diana politely declines, saying she thinks she'll pass today. Apologizing softly, Diana explains she's a little worried about the waist of her dress, while a surprised Cordelia presses whether she truly won't take even a single bite. Happily devouring the cake herself, the blushing Cordelia hums that it's delicious and teasingly muses that One-sama must be at that self-conscious age too. Hunched breathlessly over a basin, a shaken Diana gasps and trembles as a horrifying suspicion claws its way to the surface. Cold sweat dripping down her face, she frantically demands of herself why she never noticed something so glaringly, monstrously obvious. A chilling revelation detonates in her mind as Diana realizes that before every single devastating miscarriage, she had always eaten that exact poisoned pound cake. Stealing her trembling resolve outside the estate, the reborn Diana fiercely vows she can't keep living the way she did before and grimly reminds herself that she must be careful from now on. The graduation ceremony reaches its triumphant climax as the headmaster proudly commands the assembled graduates to devote their utmost to the kingdom of Latridge from this day forward. Raising a celebratory toast high, the beaming presenter joyfully congratulates everyone on their coming of age and warmly urges them to enjoy the graduation party to their heart's content. Whispering enviously about the untouchable twins of House Gazard, the wistful graduates lament that they were completely out of their league and mourn how graduation means they'll never see them so easily again. Radiating breathtaking beauty, the two sisters are reverently introduced to the dazzled crowd as Diana of the Moon and Cordelia of the Sun. Buzzing admirers gush over the flawless pair, praising the gentle Cordelia as a sight for sore eyes while marveling that the brilliant Diana graduated top of the class with an A in swordsmanship and a coveted S rank in magic. Flashing a charming, confident smile, an elegant young man boldly greets the beautiful jewels of House Gazard as the massive crowd watches breathlessly, wondering if anyone is brave enough to approach them under so many prying eyes. Introduced as Lawrence Latridge, Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Latridge, the striking royal graciously extends his congratulations on their graduation. Bowing gracefully alongside her flustered twin, the composed Cordelia sweetly thanks His Highness for his far too kind words while onlookers gawk in stunned disbelief that the Crown Prince himself has appeared. Lowering her gaze in quiet dejection, the reborn Diana softly begs the prince's pardon, her subdued demeanor drawing his sharp attention. Leaning in with a teasing whisper, the amused Lawrence playfully tells the flushing Diana that this bashful side of her is rather adorable. Watching the fawning prince through wary, half-lidded eyes, the guarded Diana coldly notes to herself that this is only the second time she has ever laid eyes on him. A cheerful voice rings out congratulating Diana and Cordelia on their coming of age, and the exhausted Diana silently sighs that this dreadful ordeal is finally, mercifully over. A sudden pair of wine glasses intrudes into view, wrenching a startled gasp from the wide-eyed Diana. Beaming warmly behind his monocle, the doting Wesley Gazard tenderly greets his daughters as father, marveling at how much they've grown, while a puzzled Cordelia asks why he's carrying wine in both hands. Scanning the glittering hall with sudden urgency, the desperate Diana recalls that he was standing right here only a moment ago before triumphantly spotting her target at last. Whipping around with shining, hopeful eyes, the breathless Diana urgently calls out to Alan. An unfamiliar gloved hand rises smoothly into view as a polite, detached voice murmurs a quiet "excuse me." Standing tall amid the swirling party, the dignified Wesley is asked by his approaching wife whether he went to see his daughters, gently chiding that he should have called her so she could have gone with him. A stranger's polished shoes step into frame as an unknown gentleman courteously congratulates Diana Dono on her graduation. Her heart swelling with desperate, aching hope at finally getting to see him, the tearful Diana listens as the man politely apologizes for not greeting her sooner, remarking it has been a very long time. Introduced as Alan Lattridge, younger brother of the King of Lattridge, the rugged knight warmly congratulates her on graduating as the awestruck Diana breathlessly whispers his name. Thrusting a glass forward with a radiant grin, the doting Wesley declares he brought it just for Alan, while the sparkling-eyed Diana stammers a flustered half-thanks in the background. Waving him off gently, the composed Alan reminds Wesley he already told him he isn't drinking today, even as the persistent father coaxes him to have at least one. Firmly refusing again, the dutiful Alan points out that tomorrow is nothing but preparations for the Northern Monster Subjugation campaign, sending the horrified Diana screaming internally that he absolutely cannot go. Extending his hand with quiet grace, Alan asks the frozen Diana whether she would do him the honor of dancing with him. Steeling her racing heart, the reborn Diana fiercely reminds herself that she cannot simply be happy she got to see him again. This reunion demands something more. Narrowing her gaze with grim resolve, the determined Diana silently vows that this time she has to do something entirely different from before. Her cheeks flushing softly, the tearful Diana lifts her eyes and warmly accepts, telling Alan she would be delighted to dance. As her father drunkenly protests being used as an escape excuse, the resolved Diana takes Alan's offered hand, fiercely convinced that if she takes action she can finally change how everything unfolds. Gazing up at his towering, gallant form with wide, shining eyes, the utterly smitten Diana breathes a dazzled wow as he leads her onto the floor. Chuckling warmly as they dance, the gracious Alan admits her rescue wasn't merely an excuse and sincerely apologizes for his meddling father, confessing he's glad it proved useful all the same. Melting into his strong embrace, the overwhelmed Diana rests her trembling hand upon his broad shoulder as they sway together. Her heart aching with bittersweet wonder, the reborn Diana savors their breaths falling into rhythm and his warm fingertips against hers, marveling that they haven't been this close since childhood. Whirling breathlessly across the glittering hall in his arms, the tearful Diana is struck by the overwhelming, miraculous truth that Alan Sama really is alive. Smiling with roguish charm, the flattered Alan muses that for someone like Diana Dono to ask him to dance, he supposes he's still got it. Gazing up at him with earnest devotion, the sincere Diana insists there was never anyone at the entire academy as dependable as her beloved Alan Sama. Twirling joyfully together as delighted laughter rings out, the radiant pair glides across the polished ballroom floor. Sweeping her elegantly across the marble in perfect harmony, the graceful Alan guides the blushing, wistful Diana through the flowing steps. Giggling softly against his chest, the enchanted Diana praises him as a wonderful dancer, while the humble Alan deflects that he's just an old man overdoing it after nothing but years of training. Beaming through glistening tears of pure joy, the reborn Diana bitterly recalls how in her previous life she and Alan Sama parted after exchanging only a single greeting and then everything went so horribly wrong. Haunted by the monstrous dragon looming behind their final embrace, the grief-stricken Diana bitterly recalls that this dance was the very last time she ever saw Alan Sama alive. Swaying together across the floor, the curious Diana asks when Alan will depart for the campaign, remarking she was surprised someone of his stature would join a routine subjugation. Gazing ahead with steady resolve, the dutiful Alan calmly declares that the nature of the mission doesn't matter if necessary, knights become the kingdom's shield, and that is simply their sworn duty. As he bows and releases her hand at the dance's end, The anguished Diana screams silently in her heart the two desperate words she has no right to say aloud: "Don't go." Smiling with gentle warmth, the gracious Alan thanks Diana Dono for a wonderful time and the precious memory, unaware of the plea trapped behind her composure. Masking her breaking heart behind a serene smile, the tearful Diana softly thanks him as well for dancing with her. Reflecting on her tragic past, the reborn Diana painfully admits that in her previous life everything came too late. Back then she was far too young to even recognize her own feelings for him. Steeling herself with fierce new determination, the resolved Diana reminds herself that this time is completely different, because they are both still alive. Her eyes welling with tears as she gazes at his handsome profile, the emotional Diana silently confesses she really, truly doesn't want to lose him. Storming over with a wine glass clutched in each hand, the drunkenly indignant Wesley demands to know if Alan was trying to seduce his precious daughter. Chuckling smoothly at the overprotective father, the unfazed Alan insists they were merely dancing, prompting Wesley to accuse him of being a natural-born flirt. Watching the pair from across the hall with a sly, knowing smirk, the calculating observer muses that their dance looked awfully passionate, didn't it? Lounging arrogantly in an ornate chair, the scheming Miles remarks how interesting it is that the first person Diana Dono asked to dance was his own uncle, while a companion dismisses it, noting His Highness and Diana are nearly far enough apart in age to be father and daughter. Tilting his head with a mischievous glint, the provocative Lawrence muses that despite the 17-year gap, from where he's standing the two of them seem rather well matched. Sprawled lazily beside the prince, the dry Miles retorts that calling them well-matched is taking the joke far too far, Your Highness. Turning his sharp gaze away with a subtle, unreadable smirk, the enigmatic Miles watches the lingering pair with quiet, calculating interest. A firm knock sounds as the determined Diana enters her father's study, announcing she needs to speak with him, and the puzzled Wesley asks what the matter is. Clenching her trembling hands with grim resolve, the reborn Diana silently steels herself against the memory that in her previous life she was murdered by her own younger twin sister. Reliving the horror of her final moments, the anguished Diana remembers how they all died together: the pitiful her who could only give up and weep, and the foolish her who was used and cruelly discarded. Standing tall with unshakable determination, the transformed Diana boldly proposes that House Gazard send troops to the northern subjugation as well, fiercely vowing that this time, no matter what it takes, she won't let Alan Sama die. Standing tall in the dim study as her father sits behind his desk, the resolute Diana silently declares that from now on she will live her own life. Facing Wesley with unwavering conviction, the determined Diana formally proposes that House Gazard send troops to the northern monster subjugation campaign as well. Studying his daughter's tense face with sharp, narrowed eyes, the shrewd Wesley presses her to explain why it is necessary to send soldiers only this particular time. Fixing her with a piercing, knowing stare, the perceptive Wesley coldly asks whether this sudden proposal isn't being made for Alan's sake. A sprawling forest stretches across the northern reaches of the Kingdom of Latridge, home to a wide variety of monsters that the kingdom regularly dispatches subjugation squads to cull and control. Averting her gaze with a bead of nervous sweat, the conflicted Diana quietly admits to herself that she can't say for certain this has nothing to do with Alan Sama. Leveling a stern warning at her, the principled Wesley makes clear that even though she is his daughter, he will never allow her to use their soldiers for personal ends. Steeling herself to risk everything, the determined Diana resolves to make him accept her proposal by weaving in the terrifying truth she alone knows. She confesses she had a dream. Her voice cracking with raw urgency, the desperate Diana reveals she dreamed a monstrous stampede would erupt during the subjugation and countless people would die. Studying her stricken expression with a flicker of unease, the wary Wesley slowly concedes that such a vision must have been a truly terrifying dream. Clenching his hand in troubled thought, the grave Wesley admits that if they were caught in a stampede with only the weapons and manpower meant for a routine subjugation, not even the mighty Alan would return unharmed, and the trembling Diana insists it truly was terrifying. A sharp gasp escapes the wide-eyed Diana as her father's sudden, probing voice cuts through her spiraling dread, calling her name in quiet suspicion. Averting her eyes, the flustered Diana apologizes that the dream felt far too real, admitting it was only a dream while insisting it gave her the crucial push to act this time. Steepling his fingers in deep contemplation, the calculating Wesley acknowledges that monster numbers have indeed been rising in recent years, musing that if House Gazard takes the initiative it could strengthen the royal family's trust in them. Thrusting her gloved hand forward with fierce determination, The bold Diana seizes the opening and asks whether he would entrust her with command of the deployment. Frowning with paternal concern, the cautious Wesley reminds her that before she is the next head, she remains a duke's daughter, incredulously asking if she truly intends to go herself. Standing her ground with radiant confidence, the composed Diana reminds her father that he knows perfectly well the exceptional results she achieved at the academy, as he groans in reluctant thought. Pressing her case with unshakable poise, the assured Diana declares she's confident she'll prove more useful than an average knight and formally begs him to grant her permission. Torn between duty and love, the anguished Wesley inwardly concedes that as head of the house he understands her reasoning perfectly, but as her father, he agonizes over the impossible decision. Gazing wistfully at a cherished portrait of his beloved twin daughters as children, the sentimental Wesley wavers, his resolve softening beneath the weight of fatherly affection. Cradling his two beloved infant daughters against him with a tender, aching smile, the devoted young Wesley gazes down at the precious twins nestled in his arms. Closing his eyes in weary resignation, the softened Wesley finally relents, declaring that very well, he will petition His Majesty about sending troops. Regarding his determined daughter with a wry, knowing smile, the impressed Wesley admits he never knew she cared so deeply for their ducal house and challenges her to show what she's capable of as its future head. Her face erupting into a radiant, tearful blush of pure joy, the overjoyed Diana beams and thanks her father with all her heart. As the departing Diana slips out and quietly closes the heavy study door behind her, the pensive Wesley returns to his desk, dipping his quill in solitary thought. Slumping back in his chair with a heavy sigh, the uncertain Wesley murmurs to the empty room, wondering whether this truly was the right decision. Drifting into a cherished memory, the younger Wesley recalls his dying wife Nadia tenderly imploring him to always be on these girls' side. Smiling weakly through her tears as she clutches her tiny daughters, the fading Nadia declares that their lives belong to them, and that she wants them to live freely, pursuing whatever they truly desire. Reflecting on his late wife's final wish, the melancholic Wesley confesses that his daughters have grown up so safe and healthy that he simply can't help being overprotective. A respectful voice calls out belated congratulations to the milady on her coming of age, drawing Diana's attention. Grinning warmly beneath his armor, the affable knight introduced as Ian, vice-captain of the Gazard Knights, remarks it's a good thing his lordship granted her permission after all. Exhaling in quiet relief, the composed Diana admits that yes, talking business with her father still makes her nervous, reflecting that while he spoils his daughters normally, as head of the house he is an entirely different man. Wiping away lingering tension, the thoughtful Diana confesses she ended up telling him something as absurd as a dream, silently acknowledging that lies and evasions would never work against a man who has navigated high society for so long. Standing shoulder to shoulder with her loyal vice-captain, the commanding Diana declares she's counting on him on the battlefield, and the reliable Ian assures her he's already spoken to the men they can bring along. Grimly stressing that they must prepare for the terrifying possibility of a stampede, the resolute Diana thanks him and urges they organize the unit right away, even as Ian worries whether they can make it in time. Pressing a tense finger to her lips with only 10 days remaining until the subjugation, the steely Diana silently vows that failure is absolutely not an option. A sudden voice politely interrupts, calling out "Excuse me, Lady Diana," and drawing her startled attention. Turning within the stables to face an approaching attendant, the puzzled Diana asks if she had an appointment, only to be told she has an unexpected visitor. Whirling around in bewildered surprise to find a familiar figure waiting, the confused Diana stares as the newcomer remarks this was quite an unexpected visit. Coldly declining a servant's offered tea with a curt claim that he hasn't the time to sit around drinking it, the arrogant Miles casually greets her, asking what brings her here so suddenly. So, he came. Miles O'Donoghue, the arrogant second son of the O'Donoghue Marquis family, materializing before her stained by unwelcome memory. Swirling his wine with lazy arrogance, the calculating Miles smoothly claims he heard she was bound for somewhere dangerous, insisting that as her close friend he simply couldn't ignore it. Gazing at the shadowed bed, the reborn Diana bitterly recalls this smirking man was once her husband in a life drowned in horror. Releasing a heavy sigh, the resolute Diana coldly confirms her destination, flatly stating that someone absolutely has to march on the Northern Monster Subjugation campaign. The unsettled nobles murmur their disbelief that a woman would go, while the reborn Diana grimly recognizes these very words, having learned them all too well in her previous life. Every poisonous word dripping from the arrogant Miles, and every cruel thing he once threw back at her, floods her memory with chilling clarity. Sneering with monstrous contempt, the cruel Miles once demanded to know how he was supposed to support a woman who couldn't even bear children, his fear of losing a breeding vessel masquerading as concern. Clinking his glass with maddening calm, the calculating Miles idly asks what she thinks of those words, feigning ignorance of their weight. Shrugging off her confusion, the arrogant Miles insists the wording was merely a little harsh, coolly declaring that bearing children is a woman's important role, leaving the reborn Diana bewildered why children entered the conversation at all. Staring ahead with sudden, chilling focus, the reborn Diana feels the calculating Miles' true nature crystallize before her. Setting down his teacup with feigned worry, the shrewd Wesley anxiously begs her not to tell him that man actually said such a thing to her. Slamming her cup against the saucer, the reborn Diana sharply demands to know who that man is, prompting the doting Wesley to snap at her to stop playing dumb. Leaning close with a knowing smirk, the shrewd Wesley reminds her that the gallant Alan was the only man she danced with at the entire graduation party. Her wide eyes glisten with the raw, aching memory of that single stolen dance. Utterly flustered, the reborn Diana stammers why the gallant Alan is even coming up, while the doting Wesley presses that everyone at the party noticed how close she and His Highness had grown. Leaning in with a shrewd, teasing grin, the doting Wesley declares that anyone could tell exactly how she felt from the look on her face. Recoiling in stunned disbelief, the reborn Diana echoes his words back, having never once imagined her own longing had been so nakedly visible. Waving away his outburst with cool composure, the reborn Diana feigns total ignorance, coldly asking the doting Wesley if there's some problem with whatever he thinks he saw. Rising with dismissive impatience, the doting Wesley icily suggests she make an appointment next time and asks the reborn Diana to leave since she claims to be so busy, the pretense of coldness thick between them. Fixing her with a probing stare, the shrewd Wesley bluntly demands why she remains so obsessed with that tainted bloodline. Sneering with venomous conviction, the calculating Miles brands the gallant Alan a traitor who tried to murder his own brother, the reigning king of Latrich himself. Snapping at his slander, the reborn Diana calls it disrespectful, but the arrogant Miles coldly insists it's simply the truth. Gesturing with cruel triumph, the calculating Miles demands why she thinks a man bearing the Latrich name and born the king's own younger brother is dumped on routine monster hunts and left unmarried for so long. Fixing her with a knowing sneer, the calculating Miles declares that the contemptuous way they treat the gallant Alan says everything. Leaning into his poison, the cruel Miles orders her to imagine bearing that man's child, a power struggle guaranteeing immediate execution before the reborn Diana coldly cuts him off with his own name. Turning her chilling gaze upon him, the resolute Diana flatly declares it's about time he shut his mouth. The arrogant Miles flinches, visibly rattled that his fearless prey has finally bared her fangs. Recovering with a nervous, wheedling grin, the calculating Miles begs her not to look at her worried best friend like that, drawing only a flat, incredulous "huh" from the reborn Diana. Coldly commanding Ian to see him out, the resolute Diana ignores his desperate insistence that unlike Cordelia she was isolated at the academy, and that he alone stayed loyally by her side. Wild-eyed and pleading, the calculating Miles insists he slowly wormed his way close to the gallant Alan since childhood and finally became his best friend, frantically begging her to believe him. Watching his retreating back, the reborn Diana silently recalls this desperate schemer became her husband and coldly resolves she'll never let some old man steal her away now. Baring his teeth in furious ambition, the arrogant Miles vows that he is the one whole marry into the house of Gazard. Bristling with wounded pride, the arrogant Miles snaps at being ordered around and demands to know who she thinks he is, as the resolute Diana icily repeats for him to please leave. Clenching his jaw against a cold sweat, the calculating Miles falters as the reborn Diana pointedly asks who, exactly, he even is to her. Watching the doors close behind his vanishing figure, the reborn Diana silently reflects that it's that infuriating smart mouth of his she remembers all too well. Down at the bustling northern forest region entrance, murmuring soldiers gossip, asking whether anyone's heard about the Gazard family's commander. Smirking cynically among the ranks, the gossiping soldiers marvel that the young lady topped the academy yet dragged 500 soldiers to a routine hunt, sneering that the girl clearly loves making herself stand out. Striding out from the fortress with unshakable resolve, the determined Diana leads her assembled unit beneath the open sky, the reliable Ian at her flank. Gazing forward with quiet, steely purpose, the determined Diana advances at the head of her mounted knights, her heart fixed on the single mission of rewriting the gallant Alan's doomed fate. Bustling within the command tents at the fortified encampment, An approaching voice warmly addresses His Highness, offering renewed thanks, signaling the gallant Alan's imminent, fateful appearance. Rising warmly to greet her, the gracious Alan welcomes Diana Dono, expressing his heartfelt gratitude for allowing the Gazard Knights to join the campaign. Flashing a rugged, disarming grin, the gallant Alan urges her to drop the stiff Your Highness and simply call him Alan, the way she always has. Holding her stoic composure, the resolute Diana firmly refuses the familiarity, insisting that as the one responsible for the Gazard family's troops, she cannot afford such casualness. Rubbing his chin with genuine concern, the gracious Alan admits that while she's no bother at all, had assumed her safety meant stationing the Gazard Knights on rearguard duty, prompting the determined Diana to ask if she was truly a nuisance. Lifting her chin with fierce pride, the determined Diana declares she volunteered for the battlefield and begs the same orders as everyone else, vowing she won't let anyone think she got cold feet. Turning grave, the gallant Alan warns that monster hunts leave no room for carelessness, quietly cautioning that he may not have the luxury of protecting her, the determined Diana coolly answering that she'll be fine. Bristling with fierce loyalty, the determined Diana boldly leans in and declares that if anything, she'll be the one to protect His Highness. Locking eyes across the sudden, charged silence, the gallant Alan and the determined Diana each freeze, his weathered face caught utterly off guard by her fearless devotion. Softening into a warm, defeated smile, the gracious Alan relents, agreeing she'll join the main force and gently ordering her never to leave his side. Beaming with radiant joy, the determined Diana bows her head and thanks him with overwhelming, heartfelt gratitude. Striding forward beside the gallant Alan, the reborn Diana silently marvels that from here lies a world that never existed in her previous life, fiercely declaring her truly new life begins now. Glancing sidelong at her earnest face, the gallant Alan wonders why this girl is so impossibly honest and straightforward, dimly recalling she's been exactly this way ever since she was a small child. 12 years earlier, cradling a bouquet outside the Gazard estate, a younger gracious Alan is showered with the doting Wesley's tearful thanks for saving his beloved daughters. Staring flatly at the overwhelming display, the 24-year-old Alan can only murmur the doting Wesley's name in weary bewilderment. Sweating with embarrassment, the young Alan protests that every single visit turns into such an excessive fuss, silently noting the shrewd Wesley's bow is far, far too deep. Straightening with quiet sincerity, the doting Wesley begs to at least offer that much gratitude, confessing he still dreams of the terrifying kidnapping even now. Waving off the praise with humble modesty, the young Alan insists he's simply glad both girls are safe, explaining the scene merely happened to fall near his patrol route as the grateful Wesley gushes that his presence truly saved them. Bursting through the doors with radiant, childish delight, a young Cordelia races in beaming while her twin follows, the innocent joy on her face concealing the monstrous nature that will one day surface. Sweating in sudden panic, the doting Wesley yelps that the gallant Alan is already here, drawing a startled awe from the flustered young Diana. Offering a sheepish, sweat-dropped smile, the young Alan gently greets Diana Dono as she stammers a frantic apology for her rudeness, the fateful bond between them quietly taking root. Peeking timidly from behind the doorway, a young Cordelia lingers as her twin comes pattering eagerly across the hall, the sisters' contrasting natures quietly framed side by side. Sweeping into a graceful, practiced curtsy, the young Diana greets Alan Sama and thanks him wholeheartedly for saving them the other day. Reflecting warmly across the years, the gallant Alan chuckles that Diana Dono tells him outright she's happy to see him, gently praising the grown woman before him for looking so well. Gazing up with sparkling, adoring eyes, the young Diana confesses that whenever she saw the gracious Alan, she could forget the relentless violence of her daily life. Scratching his neck with rueful warmth, the gallant Alan admits he really can't win against Diana Dono, softly echoing her vow to protect him, though he reminds himself he cannot afford to let his guard down right now. Softening into a tender, faraway gaze, the gallant Alan regards the determined Diana with a quiet, complicated warmth blooming behind his weathered eyes. Crossing her arms with brisk authority, the determined Diana sharply asks the reliable Ian whether he's finished checking everyone's positions. Absorbed in fastening a knight's gear, the determined Diana works with quiet focus while the gallant Alan, surrounded by flustered, blushing soldiers, bewilderedly asks what this is and why they've all gathered around, staring intently her way. Towering with commanding presence, the determined Diana looms over her sprawled, awestruck knights, her fearless competence leaving them flat on their backs in stunned admiration. Booming in an ultra-deep, thunderous voice, the reliable Ian reports that preparations for departure are complete, prompting the determined Diana to crisply order everyone into position. Grinding his teeth in comic envy, the arrogant Miles raises his glass and demands to know why the gallant Alan is sweet-talking her, as Diana bitterly realizes this jealous fury is exactly how the doting Wesley once felt. Watching the ripple she leaves in her wake, the observing knights sigh in wonder that her mere appearance transforms the entire atmosphere surrounding them. Regarding her with quiet, wistful affection, the gallant Alan marvels that the little girl he once rescued has grown into such a breathtakingly beautiful woman. Striking a wry, dramatic pose, the gallant Alan ruefully concludes it's no wonder he feels so old. Rising tall atop his mount, the gallant Alan of the Third Knight Order proclaims to the assembled forces that they will now begin the northern monster subjugation. Surveying the united ranks with grave resolve, the gallant Alan warns that the monster population has climbed relentlessly in recent years, ordering all forces Gazard Knight Order and Royal Guard alike to advance deeper into the forest than ever before and give it their absolute everything. Erupting from the shadowed trees, a monstrous, shrieking bird beast bursts forth with razor talons and thrashing wings, heralding the eruption of savage combat. Charging headlong into the fray, the determined Diana and the mounted knights clash violently against the swarming, grotesque monsters in a whirlwind of steel and fury. Whipping around atop his galloping steed as an ominous rumble swells through the forest, the gallant Alan barks the order to press straight on to Point B, his knights roaring their obedient reply. Thundering ever louder, a crushing wave of countless stampeding hooves tramples the fallen monsters into the churning earth, the catastrophic disaster that once claimed the gallant Alan's life now roaring toward them all. Gaping in awe at the slain giant beast, the marveling knights gush that the gallant Alan already took down something that huge, agreeing that unless it's a stampede, there's simply no way Alan Sama would ever lose. Slumped and brooding in the shadows, the reborn Diana silently seizes on their words, grimly musing that a stampede now that would truly be something. Ringing sharply through the trees, a commanding voice orders all units to take their positions and never forget to report in. Poring over the strategic map, the determined Diana studies how the northern forest is carved into concentric zones. Clearing monsters to Point C secures the kingdom, though the swelling monster population now pushes them to consider extending the operation to Point D. Sweeping aside the tent flap at Point B's command headquarters, the gallant Alan strides in as reports pour steadily across his desk. Marking the map with brisk satisfaction, the gallant Alan notes they're progressing faster than usual and Point B is nearly cleared, marveling aloud that the Gazard Knight Order has been absolutely incredible. Charging across the battlefield atop her galloping steed, blade flashing through shrieking monsters, the determined Diana has utterly silenced the scoffers. No one questions a woman among them anymore, their morale soaring as they refuse to be outdone by her. Gazing wearily over her shoulder amid the drifting ash, the determined Diana carries the weight of the whispered awe now trailing her every move. Regarding her with quiet respect, the Third Knight Order's vice commander remarks to the gallant Alan that, by every witness account, her swordsmanship is nearly equal to his own. Chuckling with warm resignation, the gallant Alan concedes it's no wonder the doting Wesley could never stop Diana Dono from having her way. Standing rigid and imposing in his pristine uniform, Ulysses Joseph, vice commander of the Royal Guard and deputy commander of the subjugation, is coolly addressed by his rank. Fixing the assembly with a cold, unreadable stare, the austere Ulysses declares he wants the Gazard Knight Order to guard the wounded and escort them safely back to the city. Narrowing her eyes in sharp disbelief, the determined Diana silently balks at the absurdity of 500 elite soldiers being reduced to mere escorts for the wounded. Turning coldly from her, the austere Ulysses and his officers rebuff the determined Diana, lecturing that a worthy heir must learn obedience and warning that her rebellious streak will be her undoing. The matter, they insist, already decided, as she can only ask what the gallant Alan himself commanded. Booming with cheerful reassurance outside the tents, the reliable Ian urges the deflated Diana not to let it get her down, insisting a vice commander's abilities are never limited to swordsmanship alone. Reeling at the fresh command relayed at Point C's camp, the determined Diana echoes the words in stunned disbelief. Return to the city. Fixing the austere Ulysses with a probing stare, the determined Diana demands why her unit alone is being sent back, as he flatly informs her the operation will push on to Point D tomorrow. Grumbling under her breath as the officers depart, the exasperated Diana wonders why nobles must always talk in such a maddeningly roundabout way. Chattering nervously at her side, the reliable Ian frets that it's already strange they've seen no sign of a stampede this deep in, and now they've been ordered to withdraw, cheekily asking what his lady intends to do. Widening her eyes in dawning unease, the reborn Diana inwardly confesses she never expected this, as the austere Ulysses coldly reminds her they simply cannot disobey their orders. Stunned by the baffling report, the gallant Alan demands confirmation that the Gazard Knight Order truly withdrew from the front. Bewildered voices ripple through the camp. No one can imagine Diana Dono fleeing in fear of monsters, and Ulysses coldly insists he issued no such order at all. Locking eyes across the tense silence, the provocative Lawrence slyly probes whether some other hidden reason lurks behind the strange withdrawal. Veiling his threat in courtesy, the enemy noble warns that rumors about Alan and the king are known, and any suspicious move will be reported straight to his superiors. Fixing the smug envoy with a piercing stare, the gracious Alan darkly asks if there is truly something he wishes to say. Smiling with silken insolence, the provocative Lawrence coolly answers that there is absolutely nothing from him. Standing rigid before the commander, the austere Ulysses flatly reports that he has properly handled the matter concerning the Gazard Knight Order. Watching the exchange dissolve, a baffled onlooker nervously wonders aloud what that unsettling confrontation was even about. Slumped alone in the dim tent, the reliable Ian grimly confesses that something about Diana Dono's actions gives him a deeply bad feeling. Gritting his teeth in frustration, the gallant Alan recalls that Ulysses commands a royal guard of high-ranking nobles, leaving him unable to move until the operation concludes. Surveying the arrogant ranks of gilded knights, the gracious Alan bitterly concludes that interrogating them would be futile, since not one would ever surrender the truth. A lone crow flaps from the black canopy over the sleeping tents as a hidden, monstrous form suddenly twitches to life. Soft snores drift through the quiet encampment while shadowed figures creep silently between the pale tents. Moving with lethal precision, the masked intruders wordlessly count down 1, 2, 3 before striking. Bursting through the tent in a blur, an assassin's blade drives straight toward the sleeping figure within. Steel meets steel with a shattering flash as the treacherous strike is violently intercepted, ringing a strangled cry of shock from the stunned attacker. Vaulting upward through the collapsing canvas, the resolute Diana springs clear as her comrades gasp that the enemy has vanished, frantically demanding where he went. Descending from the darkness with cold fury blazing in her eyes, the reborn Diana looms over the terrified would-be killers. Rising fully into view behind her stunned knights, the determined Diana radiates an overwhelming, merciless resolve. Closing ranks at her back, the loyal Gazard knights level their blades, utterly unshaken and ready to strike. Landing lightly amid the wreckage, the resolute Diana coolly apologizes for roughing them up, having mistaken the royal guard for intruders. Surveying the vast enemy horde encircling him, the reborn Diana slyly notes the Third Knight Order is nowhere in sight and taunts whether His Highness can hold out against so many alone. Rising with quiet menace, the calculating Miles offers to let Alan find out, coldly musing that he always knew this day would come ever since he learned exactly where he stood. Bursting forward with a scream, a shrill voice brands the gallant Alan the traitor who tried to murder the king. A caption marks a tender flashback. The gracious Alan, only 8 years old, cradling a bouquet with wide, innocent eyes. Overhearing cruel whispers about Osniel Sama, the young Alan bewilderedly protests to his aged servant that he has never tried to kill anyone, baffled why they would say such a thing. Leaning close, the old man gravely explains that while Alan still lay in his mother's womb, her elder brother plotted a rebellion. Trembling with dawning dread, the boyish Alan breathes in disbelief that his own uncle was the traitor, unable to fathom why. Smiling grimly beneath the greenhouse glass, the aged servant reveals that had the firstborn Osniel Sama been gone, Alan himself would have become the next king. Clutching his ball in confusion, the young Alan protests he has done nothing to his brother, only for the old man to insist that to everyone else it makes no difference at all. Fixing the frightened boy with a solemn gaze, the servant warns that if Alan wishes to survive in this kingdom, he must never draw attention to himself. His childish eyes glowing wide with horror, the young Alan absorbs the crushing verdict that his tainted bloodline can never be washed clean. Kneeling silently among the roses, the boyish Alan quietly asks the old gardener to make him a bouquet, the cruel words still echoing that he will forever be a traitor's descendant. A caption introduces Osniel Latridge, current king of Latridge, as the sly monarch remarks it is unusual to see his half-brother admiring flowers. Straightening with a composed smile, the gracious Alan explains he thought to pick a few as a gift, greeting his brother after so long, while Osniel slyly wonders if there is someone in his life. Peering down at the bowing figure, the provocative Osniel coolly demands to know exactly who this special someone is. Cornered against the wall with a startled yelp, the flustered Alan hastily clarifies that she is merely a girl of only 7 years, drawing amused laughter and a knowing "I see." Beaming with deceptive warmth, the sly Osniel graciously bids his half-brother to simply carry on as usual. Bowing his head in practiced obedience, the gracious Alan murmurs his assent, reflecting that every conversation with his brother ended with those same words, "Never dwell on needless things." Bowing low before the assembled troops, the calculating Miles apologizes for dragging Diana into this, while the reborn Diana inwardly marvels that he still suspects her of hiding a woman. Bitterly reflecting on his hollow existence, the gracious Alan recalls that no matter how often he swore he craved neither throne nor heir, his every action still set everyone around him on edge, idly wondering if he should just grow his hair out. Cradled against his chest, a delicate bouquet of pale roses trembles in the gallant Alan's gloved grip. Gazing softly at the blossoms, the gracious Alan muses that this is the very first time he has ever given someone flowers, quietly conceding just how bleak his life had truly been. Riding steadfastly toward the towering Gazard estate, the gallant Alan warmly confesses that back then, visiting Duke Gazard's house was the only thing that kept him going, and he simply cannot wait to see Diana Dono. Amid the flashing chaos of the present ambush, the gracious Alan recalls the brands hurled at him for 26 relentless years: a throne struggle, a traitor's blood, a criminal's son, until he was utterly sick of it. A single glistening drop slides down the weary face of the gallant Alan. Sinking to the cold ground, a younger, broken Alan bitterly confesses he no longer cares about anything at all. Lunging forward with sudden ferocity, the gallant Alan silently begs the world to set him free as an assassin triumphantly cries that they've got him. Her eyes blazing with desperate resolve, the reborn Diana screams that she will protect His Highness no matter what. Twisting through the air in a blinding blur, the gracious Alan tears through his stunned attackers as anguished screams erupt around him. Reeling in disbelief, the royal guard cry that they have assaulted him for over an hour, baffled why they cannot bring down a single man. Straining against exhaustion, the gallant Alan grips his weapon with white-knuckled determination, his shirt torn and blood streaking his brow. Steeling his flagging spirit, the resolute Alan grimly vows that he absolutely cannot die here. Picturing the sweet face of his beloved, the gracious Alan aches at the thought that if he fell, Diana Dono would be utterly heartbroken. Startled from his reverie, the reborn Diana curtly insists nothing is wrong, while the reliable Ian anxiously asks his lady if something is bothering her. Gripping her reins with mounting urgency, the determined Diana sharply commands the column to hurry. Thundering deeper into the Black Forest on horseback, the reliable Ian gravely confesses that he has a very bad feeling about all of this. Pressing their relentless assault, the enemy voices shriek at one another never to give the beast a single moment to rest. Blindsided by a sudden strike, one royal guard howls in agony as a whooshing blade sends another body flying through the dark. Baring his teeth in savage exhaustion, the gallant Alan roars at his swarming foes that they are utterly in his way. Vaulting over the fray in a whirl of motion, the resolute Diana crashes into the enemy ranks as blades scatter and bodies reel. Sweating with mounting dread, the calculating Miles frets that they should hold every possible advantage. They outnumber him this heavily, and he has nowhere left to escape.